Hey there, welcome to today's grow along. Now today I'm going to be covering poppies. So if you don't have a greenhouse, they are perfect to sow, but not all poppies are the same. Some of them are best sowed in the garden direct because they detest root disturbance, but some of them are great for actually sowing in cell trays. Even though they don't like the root disturbance, they're better in cell trays than what they are in the garden just because they're so precious, but I'll go over that. So you get annuals and you get perennials. So today I'm going to be sowing annual poppies. I'm sowing them direct out in the garden, and I'll be sowing breed seed poppies. These are the somniferum type. They have quite large seed pods, so they're great for arranging actually, although they're not as large as the giganteum. Now the giganteum poppies can be sown in exactly the same way, and they do have huge seed pods, so great for flower arrangements, but the somniferum ones are quite big as well. And these include all the feathery types, the peony types, and also the singles. So I'm not sowing the rhoeus type today, which are more of the wild ones. So they are the amazing greys, Pandora. I won't be sowing those today. We're going to wait till March to sow those. So it's January at the moment, and now's a good time to be sowing the somniferum. They don't mind a chill at all. So I've got my seed packets ready, and let me take you out into the garden and show you how I'm going to do this. It's super simple. Okay, so this is my border that I'm going to be sprinkling my poppies in, and you can see we've got some delphiniums in here, I've got some echinops in the back, I've got a few things that need cutting down, but I do have lots of little gaps just over there and over here. So this is where I'm going to sprinkle the poppy seeds. So here we go. I have got purple peony, I've got black peony, and I've also got some Hungarian blue. And all I'm going to do is just ruffle up the soil a little bit, just like this, just to make sure that they can sit in there nicely, but they shouldn't be buried. You don't need to bury them. And the seeds are really small, they're tiny, but they're in there. And there's quite a lot of them in here. So this one's the Hungarian blue. There's about 780 seeds in here. So what I'm not going to do is put them all in the same place. I'm not going to sow all 780, and I'm going to sow them really fine. And I'm literally just broadcast sowing them, sprinkling a few just in that area there. And I'll do the same with the other two packets as well. Okay, so what I've actually done is I've mixed up my 3 packets and just put them in here and mix them all up because I want a good mix of them. And essentially all I'm going to do is just sprinkle them all around like this in all the little areas. Another way that you can also sow poppies is by using seed balls. So I've got some here. So this is a mixture of clay and compost, and then there's some seeds in here too. So this essentially gives you a single dose, as it were, of seeds, and it makes sure that you don't oversow, and you can literally just scatter these around the garden, and the clay and the compost will all just dissolve with the weather and then leave the seeds on top of the soil, which will then germinate. Really just throw these on the garden just like this, and in springtime when the weather warms and the clay's dissolved, they'll come up. And that's it. It's as simple as that. They only need about 10 to 15 degrees to actually germinate. So they're not going to germinate yet because it's not going to be that warm for quite a few weeks, but the job's done and they'll be absolutely fine. They'll just hibernate there until the temperature is just right for them. Now, that's in the garden for a pretty garden environment. But if you actually want to harvest them, the quickest and easiest way to harvest anything is if it's been sown in nice straight rows. So you broadcast sow in your garden where it's pretty, but actually in the flower patch where you're growing cut flowers, you would sow them in drills. So let me show you how I'm going to do that, because we sow it in a drill, but you don't want the drill to be too thin. You want something like a, you know, a 10 centimetre drill with those poppies, you know, all over that. It doesn't need to be thin. You could even probably do it a little bit wider than that, but I do mine about 10 centimetres. That normally works. So let me show you my seed bed. So this is my seed bed, which has been pre-prepped. It's had some compost, which is just garden compost actually, just out of my compost heap, and that's been added just to give it a little bit of structure. And I'm going to sow it here. I've got some scabious in here, which is left over from last year, which is still actually looking okay. So I'm going to have some great scabious on that this year. And here we go. I'm just going to broadcast in a kind of wide drill. It's not a thin drill like this, and I'm probably only going to do about half the seed packet here, just like this. And you don't need to cover the seed. This seed will be absolutely fine. Okay, and that's it. Okay, so that's the somniferum types that I've just sowed. Now, if you want to sow rhoheus, you'd sow it in exactly the same way. So that's your Earl Greys and your Pandoras, but just wait till March. They don't like being sowed quite so soon. So the only poppy that I tend to sow in modules is generally the Icelandic poppies. So if you want to sow Icelandic poppies, that's just slightly different. I do have a grow along for that. I'll link to it down below for you so that you can check that one out too. And occasionally I might sow some giganteum just in pots as well, just if I don't have any available space at the time that I want to sow, or I haven't prepped my beds yet, I'll sometimes sow those in trays as well. And the type of trays that I would sow them in are just cell trays like this. And I would just pop the tiniest amount. I mean, if you can use a cocktail stick to actually just put a few seeds on there, then do so if you've got one to hand. If not, just a tiny little pinch. You only want 1 or 2 little seedlings in each one, because you cannot prick them out. So you do not want to sow them. You don't want to sow them in trays like this and then prick them out. That won't work. They hate the root disturbance. You must always, if you are going to sow in trays, then you sow them in cell trays like this, tiny pinch, and then you can literally take that whole plug out when it's ready and really gently pop that into a hole in the ground. And it absolutely does work, but you just need to be very, very careful. And if you want to check out my whole blog for poppies, all the different types, what they're used for, how I sow each one, again, I'll pop the link down below and you can get that. And that's it for this week. Happy sowing and happy growing.